So,
Oh, I love it.
welcome to the movie Potluck. That was great, by the way, Josh. That was so funny.
I love it.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Tonight we are going to talk about foreign films. Specifically, we're going to try to keep our foreign films inside of the 20th century, but who knows, we may stray outside of those boundaries because why not? Foreign films are super awesome. The montage that we just saw really brings up a host of this is how we think about foreign films. And ironically, I think sometimes foreign films bring out this we're cooler than you kind of idea. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I am definitely going to have to ask my hosts or my I'm sorry, my panelists, if they think that that is one of the ways that we perceive foreign cinema because boy, we had such a hot topic discussion about this the other night, and I'll clue you all in on it. But to start, wanted to sort of just talk a little bit about the general ideas behind our both love affair and our sort of distaste with foreign films. One, we do embrace a lot of foreign films in our mainstream movie watching entertainment queue. But to some degree, we also kind of shun it as being a little extra or something that's a bit different than we would maybe like to see. It's not quite as good because, or it doesn't have the same impact because it's different because all sometimes all good because yes that's absolutely true, but also sometimes we don't give foreign films a very good sporting chance because we are extremely biased, so we'll get into that as well. Lots and lots of different countries around the world have major motion picture centers and resources. I bet you didn't know that Turkey is actually a massive producer of films. India, most people know as Bollywood, and we will definitely be talking about that. That's a big one. We have a lot of films that are made in Europe that are not quite as celebrated because we just call it European cinema. But there are a lot of specifics. We all know some French cinema, I'm sure, and a lot of the interesting things that come out of Africa, we probably wouldn't see unless it was something that was released at Cannes or some other major film festival. So we don't get to see a whole lot from there. We also don't get to see a whole lot from South America. There's not a ton of movies that are being made that get put mainstream into our culture. So that's an interesting one. On the Asian side, China is a huge producer of movies. Very interesting. There are a very few number of movies that are allowed to go to China to be distributed and seen by the Chinese people. It's a very tight market because they want to keep control of the content that their people see. But it's not just that, it's the distribution and the money that goes into it. They want to keep that in country. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Japan and Korea are known, I think, to many of us in the US for exporting some of the best horror that there is. And we also now have some contenders that are from Thailand and Vietnam. Very cool, kind of uh, interesting ideas that are coming out of there. I will say that from the standpoint of how we are producing films, the fact that we can now produce a film using an iPhone has revolutionized and changed dramatically the places from which films can be made and well, I guess I should say distributed, but where they can be made and then hopefully they can be picked up by some kind of distributor. So that's why the film conferences and the film festivals are so incredibly important. But from a foreign standpoint, in fact, let's talk about this after we introduce our guests. We'll talk right away about how film festivals really affect our views on foreign films because that's where we see a whole lot of them. So we'll talk about a bunch of things. We've got a whole lot of ideas to mull around. And I definitely want to know from everyone, not just here, but also I really want to know from everyone what their views are of the subtitle versus dubbing uh, idea. Which do you prefer? And why is it so hard to dub a film? We got to talk about that. So I'm going to introduce my panel. First, we have Tori. Tori, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm excited about this topic.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. I feel like we should be able to have a pretty good conversation here. Also, I definitely want to touch on some horror related stuff, and I know you're a good person to talk about for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have Josh. Josh, how are you?
I literally just woke up from a nap.
I feel like that's actually a good place to be. Was it a good nap?
It was good enough to make me go, oh yeah, I have to get up.
Well, okay. We love you. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so first question, right off the top, where do you stand on the dub versus sub idea? Uh, do you like to watch a movie that is subtitled, or do you much prefer to watch a movie that has been dubbed? And tell me why. Go ahead, Tori.
I like subtitles only because, like, with the dub, I just think of like kung fu movies. You know, like,
Mm. Yeah,
like I don't know. It was very cheesy and fun whenever you're younger, but I don't think it would be at all easy for me to follow. It's much easier for me to read a subtitle than it is for me to actually like watch the lips move and they don't match what they're saying, you know?
you know that I feel that. I definitely feel that, and I have closed captioning on at all times on everything that I watch
Yeah,
if it's
we
on
do
TV.
too. Yeah.
For a while, I even experimented in the theaters with getting the subtitle. You can actually get something that like shows you subtitles for the movies that you watch. It's a little weird, and so I'm not quite used to how it works, but it was interesting. Um, and the thing is, you miss so much dialogue if you aren't reading it. Subtitles basically bring up like every single thing that can be heard. And it's really interesting how many more cues you get from the subtitles. Very unexpected. But dubs, well, I guess I won't say dubs yet. I will also say that subtitles make me invested in a film when I like hearing foreign languages. I like listening to other people's lilt in the way that they speak. I like hearing whatever the dramatic effect is because what inevitably ends up happening is in a dub you don't usually get the native speaker's uh, best inflection because you're speaking a different language. So you're not hearing where they're putting emphasis on things as opposed to subtitling, which can at least give you a better general sense. Now, I don't know if you saw, and this isn't a movie, so forgive me, but I don't know if you saw Squid Games. Did you see Squid Games?
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Josh, I'm gonna direct this at you and ask you that same question. Um, in Squid Games, apparently the dub was very off, and if you read the subtitles and then you listen to what they're saying, it's I don't want to say it's like listening to two different movies or two different series pieces, but there are some major uh hmm, there's lots of forks in the road. And then apparently the people that spoke uh that were native speakers listened and said, "Yeah, no, they're both wrong. Here's where they messed up." So that piece is also really important. But tell us, Josh, what are you, sub or dub on watching foreign films?
I will say first, it is dependent on what I'm watching. If it's animated, I'm more lenient towards dubs, but if it's not, it is subs all day.
So, okay, so for all of us basically at this point, we all have this experience of having to invest quite a bit of time in the movies that we watch if we're going to watch them, and they're foreign because we have to sit down to actually read subtitles, right? That's not
Hmm.
something that you can't gloss over it. You can't go, "Well, I'll just get up and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because I will just listen." Because unless you are speaking the language, yeah, you're not going to know. Um okay. So, without being too specific, I'm sure we've all heard a bad dub, right? Tell me, do you think that it actually hurts the movie, or do you feel like you get enough out of it that it's okay?
I think it hurts the movie. I think
Yeah.
it's because it makes it seem lesser quality than it probably is. Like
Yeah,
it's a B-rated horror or it's B-rated, like it's not A-list, and that's a shame.
I do think that you're right. I think that is somewhat I think you can do a good dub. Um and I think I would point to, although again, I this is not 20th century, so I'm already breaking my own rules, but I'll bring up Spirited Away, which is Hayao Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, one of the first movies that was Studio Ghibli that was presented to US audiences in a mainstream fashion. It was the first one that was really in theaters. Thank you, Ridley Scott, for bringing that to us. Um, and they did a fairly good job with that dub, right? The characters that they needed to create to make this work, you could see that they did a lot of script work in order to do the translation to make it work. And it still isn't perfect. There's a lot of people who have seen it in Japanese who will say, well, I mean, some of this stuff just doesn't translate, so it's really difficult for American audiences because what do you do? So they had to substitute. And that makes sense. That does make sense. But overall, it did feel like inflections were right. Um, I've seen a lot of, especially anime dub, what I thought were going to be good movies, and the dub itself is just so over the top because the voice actors just can't quite get it together, or maybe that's not fair. Somehow something is lost in translation. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but if you've ever heard a bad dub, you'd know what I was talking about. um okay, so I want to, I just want to sort of briefly discuss why we all together think that foreign films have sort of any place in our lives. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. I mean it seriously. Like, you know, I do feel like there are plenty of cultures around the globe that don't necessarily feel quite the same way that we do about stressing um that the idea of having foreign films is important. We tend to put a fairly low emphasis on this, but there is some. We are opening up to some of this. And again, here I am talking about something that just happened, but Parasite, which was 100% foreign, won an Oscar, and that movie was, I mean, the ideas in that movie were incredibly foreign, great, but incredibly foreign. And somehow we've turned, I think, a little bit of a corner on whether or not we think that these things are great or not. Um, so okay, so I'm gonna throw out a movie here. Tell me if you've seen it, and then if you have seen it, Then we'll move on to the next thing. um, and I'm hoping that Tori has seen at least one of these. Uh, The Ring
Okay.
and The Grudge and Audition. So those are the three. Josh, have you seen any of those?
I have.
Okay. And what about you, Tori?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. Now, Audition was, I think, in fact, Audition is in every single one of my, here's the top 500 movies that you have to see. There's not a book that I have that doesn't recap 500 movies you have to see, and Audition is not in it. And it's incredibly foreign. It's scary. That movie is so it's really great. But then there's The Ring and The Grudge. And in this country, we made a lot of uh we hashed a lot about The Ring and The Grudge, about it being scary, both of them being scary, and about the idea that is kind of behind them, which is incredibly Japanese. But then if you watch the originals, the original The Ring and the original Grudge, and in fact, Netflix did a really interesting prequel to The Grudge that takes place in the house where we then see the movie happening. And it's excellent. It's also foreign. It's not dubbed. You have to read subtitles. It's absolutely wonderful. But I wanted to get your opinion because I don't know if you've seen the originals on these, but I wanted to get your opinion about whether or not you thought that remaking movies that are foreign so that American audiences will like them, be more accepting, whether you think that that's good, or what do you think about it? What do you think about it, Tori?
Um, that kind of makes me feel like it's being watered down for me, like, oh, you stupid Americans, we need to water this down because you don't understand our sophisticated cinema, like,
So
okay,
to be honest, that is what they're saying. Just so you know.
yeah,
But yeah, go ahead.
you know, it's like, they're already pretentious enough, like,
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but it goes to show that America does need to get a little more sophistication in their lives because they're dumbing movies down for us now.
Well, okay. So, well, I'm going to ask Josh the same question. Josh, do you have an opinion on this?
We'll ask the question.
The question is, do you think that it is appropriate? Well, maybe not appropriate, but just tell me what you think about movies that are remade, that are foreign films, but we remake them for American audiences, like The Ring, like The Grudge. There's been a lot.
There have been a lot, and depending on the movie, it of course can be a really good idea or a really bad idea. Some things don't translate well to American culture, while other things, other stories could really benefit from a little bit of an Americanization, at least from an enjoyability standpoint. The Birdcage comes to mind
Mm, yeah,
Hmm,
because I absolutely love that movie. Robin Williams, Nathan Lane. What is not to love?
yeah,
right.
it's a great movie.
And while the original isn't a pile of foreign garbage or anything like that, it there is a panache that the American version brings that I don't think could be traded.
So, you know what? I think you might be onto something, which is it can be a little bit hit and miss. But let me turn the question around.
Hmm.
What do you think of other countries remaking American films to fit their narratives?
Again, I think it depends on the movie.
Yeah?
Um, there are, I mean, there are earnest efforts to remake a movie, right? they want to take the ideas and concepts and stories and like any other remake, add a bit of themselves to it. I think that's something that sort of transcends borders because Americans do it to American movies as well. But then there's things that you see that are just knockoffs of American films
Right.
with, and it's usually a big budget thing that's it's being made because some of these movies, what's the term, the dollar store Superman kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. Where you have it almost seems like it's a knockoff
Exactly.
of right, right. And you know, it's interesting to me. Okay, I'll bring forward one of the topics that I wanted to talk about because I think that this is also it speaks to exactly what you're saying.
Hmm.
We have had in the past, and especially during the mid 20th century, well, maybe a little bit further up, we've had some really interesting films that were made that are now the staple of storytelling. And we see it when we deconstruct the story itself. And I'll give you an example. It's one we actually talked about yesterday. Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai is, if you watch, part of a lot of new film concepts that have been around for a long time. Um, there's also a kind of uh, clash with what we understand as the storytelling and what we identify as the film itself. So, and I'll give you another example. The Magnificent Seven, which is I think one of my favorite. It's actually one of my favorite movies. Um,
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, it's told so well. Um, it has the it has the bravery to tell a story that is unconventional, and that's what makes it great, but it's really easy to pick out, and I actually mentioned this yesterday. The Pixar movie A Bug's Life is almost the direct translation of the Magnificent Seven, except
Mm-hmm.
in animated form. And I mean, you change some details, but I mean, that's basically what it is. And we recognize that as greatness because we all know that story. I don't know how many of us have actually seen that film. I mean, I know you guys have. Well, actually, Josh, have you seen that film?
Which
Were you
one?
the one that didn't see the Magnificent Seven?
I saw the Magnificent Seven. Yes.
Okay, so we've seen it. I do know a lot of people that haven't seen it, and oh my gosh, I know a lot of people that say that they haven't seen it because it's in black and white. And please don't ever let a movie being in black and white stop you from seeing it because
Yeah,
oh, there are some good movies out there. Um,
Clerks.
yeah,
clerks.
okay, see, there you go.
Mm-mm.
Um, if we let's skip around the globe here from Japan to well, let's talk about the Seventh Seal. So I was talking about the Seventh Seal yesterday, as uh, this idea that is also timeless. It's basically like death takes a holiday, um, and the specific version that I am the most enamored with, which I feel like is like one of the best, is the version that came out in, I believe it was 1957. Um, it had Max von Sydow in it. It was uh, it was directed by Ingmar Bergman. Uh, and have you guys seen that movie? Tori, did you see that movie? You
I
didn't see
didn't.
Seven Seal? Um, Okay. Are you familiar with the story Death Takes a Holiday?
I know.
Yes.
Okay. Tori, did you see Meet Joe Black?
Yes.
Okay. Um it's this the Seventh Seal is a bit like Meet Joe Black. I mean, it's obviously there's a lot of changes, but structurally there's a lot of similarities. Death becomes an incarnate person and has a look around. You know, hey, what's going on here? What's all this? What's all the fuss? And experiences things that they haven't experienced before. And
Hmm.
it's a very nuanced kind of idea, but it's also at its heart very interesting, I think, to most of us who, when we're watching films, when we're looking for metaphor, and the metaphor is like, yeah, you don't even need a metaphor because, see, we're just putting it all out in front of you, and this is it. It takes on this different kind of feeling. Now, the reason that I bring up the Seventh Seal is because um, Ingmar Bergman is pretty legendary overseas, and his works are unbelievably amazing. Do you guys know any other films by Ingmar Bergman? No.
No.
Um. So I'm gonna say one of my favorite Ingmar Bergman films, um, and I guess I'm pretty sure you haven't seen this movie, but maybe you've seen its adaptation or its slight remake. The Virgin Spring. Have you ever seen The Virgin Spring?
No.
Okay. The Virgin Spring is the original story piece that the oh god, now I totally forgot the name of that movie. Second House on the Left, is that what it's called?
Oh.
Last
Um
House on the Left?
Last House on the Left. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I knew that would come.
That's a
Thank you, Josh.
scary movie.
It's personal terror, right? It's absolutely
Yeah.
personal terror, and but it's at its heart, right? Last House on the Left is a revenge film. Well, The Virgin Spring is exactly that movie, but it's told from the vantage point of this happened a very long time ago. And some different sort of things happen because uh there's a sense of I guess I'll just say that there are some layers that that are happening inside of the story for the Virgin Spring, which are a little bit different from Last House on the Left, because Last House on the Left is definitely a harsher take on that kind of storytelling. However, from a foreign standpoint, I guess I shouldn't say that. From the standpoint of this being a foreign film, this is one of those movies that I was talking about before, where you see the trope, or you see the I should say this trope, you see the story construct, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all these other movies that are sort of loosely based on that, because the concept was so good that we had to run with it. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have not seen everything that has come out of Bollywood. I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen everything. I don't think I've ever seen a movie like The Virgin Spring done out of Bollywood. And probably for lots of good reasons. Culturally, we don't share the same sort of pivot points. So the stuff that comes out of Bollywood is definitely a bit different than what comes out of Western European cinema. But I'm going to ask you guys this question. When you watch movies that are foreign, and just as an example, if you watch a movie that you recognize has some kind of foreign base, do you feel like we are be- do you feel like movies that are foreign sort of get a bad rap because they aren't what we think of as mainstream, storytelling, or do you think that they become so art house that we sort of elevate them to a level, and then we don't really I don't know if that's I don't know if I think maybe I'm projecting too much into it, but what do you think about that? What do you think about how we perceive foreign films altogether? And I want to start with you, Josh, because yesterday you had a really good point, and I really want to hear that again.
Oh man. Oh jeez. Now I feel the pressure. That yesterday was such a long time ago, so we'll
I'm
see how
sorry,
I feel today.
I realized that was post nap.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the Marvel universe, nap and pre-nap, post-nap. Okay, so here's how it is for me. The perception of foreign films. I do believe that when people see other cultures played out on screen, they just see differences and consider those differences wrong or incorrect because it's not the way they're used to things. There are a lot of foreign films that could be as simple as a day in the life, right?
Right,
And because it's not your day, it's not, oh, wake up, have, 12,000 calorie breakfast waiting on the table. It's not going to work. It's not, doing all of the things that we find absolutely normal. Um, Again, they perceive it to be wrong, or I hate to use the term hard to watch, but because they can't relate to it, they might find it a bit more difficult to enjoy.
right.
That in the foreign people saying funny words probably doesn't help.
Okay, same question, Tori, and then I'm gonna ask you guys a follow up question on this.
I think that people view foreign films in a hoity-toity way, right? So it's very like maybe avant-garde. They're not sure how to take it because not only do the humor is different, the storytelling is different, the cinematography is different, like everything is slightly different because obviously it's from different cultures, so we're going to get all sorts of different ideas and stuff that Americans aren't used to. And we are one of those countries that if we're not used to it, we don't want to do it. We don't want to soak our feet. Some people do. I like other cultures, but a lot of Americans, it's America. We need to stay in American ways,
Stay in
like,
your lane.
yeah, yeah. Like, we don't want to know what's going on in Mexico, especially a horror movie from Mexico. Like, you know, so I think it's sad, honestly. It makes me not question so much why other countries dumb it down for us sometimes. We're a very closed-minded society, honestly, for being a melting pot.
Yeah, and to that. Okay, so to that point, again, I know we're sort of veering outside of real 20th century. Although I don't know. Let's see, when was that movie put out? Do you know? Oh, it was 2016. Okay, so we're going to talk about this one anyway. So, breaking all my own rules. Um, Train to Busan, which is absolutely one of my favorite films, is so wickedly done. Absolutely wickedly done. And it is extremely I mean, it's horror, but it's not just horror. It is absolutely terrifying. Partly because it follows the zombie outbreak in South Korea. And the movie itself is really frightening because they do things outside the box that I'm not used to, right? They have camera angles that make things scary. They have there's extremeness in a lot of the cinematography. There's also this heavy use of, I guess I would kind of call it desaturating color, which lends to this sort of both the utility of the places that they're in, but also you're paying attention to the people that are in your on your screen because the background feels gritty and muted. It doesn't feel like it is almost even important. And so lots of things can come out of that background because you're not paying attention to it. It's cinematically it's actually really brilliant. They did so many cool things in it. South Korea is not a place where I would expect to have a central grasp on what I feel like the US has just taken to its unbelievable level with zombie apocalypse or post apocalyptic world. And yet they did. And it was in some ways oddly more believable than anything that we've created. And I have to say that sometimes I think you're right, Tori. We see foreign films as being like, oh yeah, artsy. Hey, these are all like elite films or something like that. And honestly, I wish I mean, I think I know where that comes from, but I wish that we didn't think about it like that because there are so many really good movies that I feel like other places around the world actually do quite a bit better than we can do. And if we can appreciate that, then we all get the benefit of it, right? Plus, we get more content because the more content that we appreciate, the better it is. We will get more of it. Netflix does a really good job of curating movies from around the globe. And what happens more often than not is something will come around, it's dubbed, or there are it's presented in a way that American audiences can see it and understand it, and it takes off on its own. Squid Games was one of them. That whole series, that whole action franchise now was sitting around forever and ever, and it's a lot like the Hunger Games but for grown-ups. And from a foreign standpoint, there are things in it that don't sit well with us, but we all recognize them. um okay, have either of you guys seen the movie Hero with Jet Li?
Yes, I don't really
Maybe.
remember it though. Like I remember watching it, but I don't really remember the movie itself.
Really? Okay, so the movie Hero, um and we all know who Jet Li is, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
The movie Hero this is actually on my top 10 at all times. I mean, there are spots in my top 10 that change, but Hero is always in the top 10. The story is the it's a kind of story that you can't tell an American version of this story because we don't have the same kind of understanding of nationalism. We have a different view of nationalism because we're born from a different cultural idea of nationalism. Um, and Hero embraces this sense of when you recognize that for the good of everything, you're willing to do anything. And where we diverge and end up being, okay, well, this is a story for US audiences and this is a story for the foreign audience. Hero bridges that gap because Hero basically is a story of immense epic importance, but but we know enough about both martial arts, and thanks to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, we all have this sort of understanding of what the idealized martial arts flow is and how the fantasy representation of it is what's happening in your mind as you're actually going through motions, things like that. It is cinematically perfect, just stunning and perfect. Where I think American audiences have a problem. On Rotten Tomatoes, Hero sits at 94%, which is a very coveted spot, right? But on what I think is maybe sometimes a better representation, which is the IMDb score, it only scores an 8. And the reason that I even bring that up is because I do think that that by virtue of the film being foreign, it changes how we feel about it, despite the fact that it is stunning cinematically, despite the fact that it has the story of a story of a story, despite the fact that okay, I mean, maybe you could say that, well, I don't like Jet Li or whatever, but it's really difficult for me to think that you don't like everybody in there. um we view these stories, I think, through a different lens, not through the same critical lens that we do. Let's say, Tori, throw me out a good movie that is just an excellent movie that you just love and that you think everybody else loves too.
Mm. Mm. Harry Potter.
Okay. So, and Harry Potter scores really high, right? It's definitely got a huge fan base. Um, we accept those stories differently than we accept foreign stories because they make sense to us, right? But we I think personally, I think that we miss out a lot on a lot of excellent concepts because we aren't willing to look at the film through a different lens. And even a movie like Hero that is totally right there to bridge that gap, we still don't look at it as, yeah, this is a story we can really sink our teeth into. No, it has to be, no, this is a foreign film. I don't I don't necessarily think that people watch it feeling like they need to embrace what it is that's in it. It's just, yeah, okay, it's a foreign film. Do you know what I'm saying when I say that? It's the concept itself is sometimes a little bit, to me, it's a little bit muddy. Um but I guess it's kind of like, if we were to watch Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon and it was Americanized, and we were to have, like, okay, well, we're gonna have the Crips and the Bloods fighting out, and instead of doing martial arts, they'll have, advanced weapons. I mean, to us, that doesn't make any sense, right? Why would we make a movie like that? But in the East, these movies make total sense, and then we apply these filters to them and go, you know, it's all about martial arts, right? I don't know if I'm making my point very effectively. So I'm going to ask another question. I am going to ask Josh. Josh,
Yo, yo, yo.
what's a movie that you have seen that you think is shocking?
Shocking.
Yes, doesn't have to be foreign necessarily. We're going to start talking about what we perceive as being basically like French shock theater.
Okay. Does it have to be good?
No, it absolutely doesn't need to be good.
Okay, old.
Ooh, did you think that that was shocking?
I thought it was very shocking. There are some things that happen in there that, other than the body horror, but the pregnancy, um,
Oh yeah, that actually was pretty
Yeah.
scary.
it was all. I don't know. The shock didn't feel earned in that particular movie, but it was there nonetheless.
Right. What
So
about
yeah,
you, Tori?
Hmm. I don't know. A shocking movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a hard one. I can't think of a shocking movie in my that I have seen recently or that
Um,
I've seen at all.
Really? Are
Yeah,
you just
I'm
that
trying.
jaded?
Yeah, maybe I'm just. It doesn't. Maybe like maybe a couple horror films. I remember this one, I guess. I can't remember the name of it though. It was this vampire film out of Norway. And it was really, really like it was about this child vampire and she was
Oh,
very do you know
l-
what I'm
uh,
talking
yep. It is. There was, well, one version of it is "Let the Right One In,"
Let Me In is
um,
the
and "Let Me In" is the foreign one,
Yes,
right?
that's yep.
Yes.
That was
Let
pretty
the Right One In is the a kind of American adaptation of it.
okay. Yeah, it was pretty that was pretty shocking. But
So, oh, okay.
the
So when
human
you,
centipede, I guess, would be shocking too.
oh, there you go. That is really shocking.
it's pretty
Um,
shocking.
Yeah.
so and actually that brings up a great point. So perfect. When we make shocking movies, we're scandalized a lot. We feel, a deep sense of either, moral outrage, or in the case of body horror, oh, that's awful, how terrible, how can you even show that, those kinds of things. um and for a while there was a genre, which I guess still exists. It's not quite as prevalent as it used to be, and I think there are some rebooting of this genre type, but it's called French extremity, and it's a kind of shock and awe movie or content that can definitely take uh has foundations in body horror. um a lot of it is extremely exploitative. um there is so much about it that feels controversial when you watch it. The French are famous in the US, not in France, but they're famous in the US for including graphic and violent sex scenes, whether it's rape or whether it's something else. There is just there's a heavy tendency toward that. Um, and I would say that films like Chainsaw Massacre have real roots in that kind of storytelling. It's meant to be exploitative. It's meant to be shock. It's meant to pull you out of whatever comfort zone you're in and push you into some other place that you hadn't expected to be in. Um, what is, I think, especially interesting as we're talking about foreign films is how we have these very crazy ideas and attitudes toward especially violence and sex and other things as well, because let's not forget that the French, uh, brought to you by the French Revolution, where guillotines and other methods of basically, if you're a politician and we don't like you, we'll just drag you out in the streets and kill you. I mean, like, the French have always, I don't mean that as, this is the basis for what they're doing. I'm saying that, like, the roots of their culture are based in a kind of, hey, y- things are serious, but they're serious in a way that is very visceral.
Mm.
And so their storytelling is that way too. And French cinema has been an extremely interesting um vehicle by which we can see that. The reason that I think that this is also kind of interesting is because the French also give us a lot of movies about specifically martyrs, which we don't see a lot in American cinema. We see them occasionally. We see Braveheart. which is definitely a martyr story. We see Gladiator, which is
Mhm.
also a martyr story. Those kinds of movies, yeah, we like them. Partly, I think, because we resonate with the martyr at the heart of Christianity as Christ being sort of the ultimate martyr, right? So I think we kind of like those. But the French do it really well with making martyrs out of everyday people, and that lends a new spin to it. So I feel like that's kind of an interesting take in movie and in storytelling. Um, One quick thing about this, because I don't know if have you guys ever seen anything that was French that you thought, yeah, this is really good, or wow, uh, this is a bridge too far for me. Have you seen any of those movies?
No.
No. Um, have you ever? Can you think of any movies that you've seen that are specific, just French?
Maybe if you said some titles, I might have, but off the top of my head, no.
Have you ever seen the movie called Man Bites Dog?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's absolutely an excellent movie. And Tori, I really think you would like it because it is the kind of visceral horror story that I feel like you'd really like.
Okay.
What about the movie Irreversible?
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Okay, this is Gaspar, and I can never say his last name. Noé. Noé. Uh, he Gaspar is an extremely famous director, and he created this. Oof, it's hard to watch. Uh, the central character is a character named Alex. Um, the reason that this is so difficult is because there is a 10-minute. Now, okay, just to put this into perspective, right? In theaters, 10 minutes is a long time. It is a ton of storytelling time. And he took 10 minutes out of his film to narrate, well, not narrate, but visually narrate a rape scene. And it is the most difficult 10 minutes in theater to experience. And if you're sitting in a theater, or if you were in a theater when you watch this, I was not, thank goodness, um, you can't look away, and it's absolutely horrific, but that's the point, right? The French have, and I feel like a lot of French directors have a sense of, you're not supposed to look away, this is terrifying, this is horrifying, you're supposed to be as uncomfortable as possible. A couple years ago there was a movie called Raw, which was about a woman who basically became a cannibal. Uh, she was a vegetarian, and she starts eating uncooked chicken and then eventually starts eating human bodies. Um, and again, it is definitely, it's very, it's culturally significant, because it definitely has overtones of, hey, pay attention. Here are some socio-political things, or even just socio things, that we should be paying attention to. But also, it's just excellent storytelling. It's very, very good. Um, it's also one of those movies that feels like you want to look away because it's just so bad. Like bad as in, oh my god, this is so uncomfortable. But it's also like, oh yeah, you thought Hannibal was bad. Yeah, this is over the top. Um, let's see. There's another. What was the other movie that I was thinking of? The other movie, I want to say it was called um Them. I think it was called Them. And this is an intruder movie, which in America we kind of like. Uh and I don't know if you've seen that movie. Have you guys seen that movie at all?
It sounds really familiar.
I have not.
Okay. It's a home invasion movie. It also is one of those, you want to look away because the body horror is so impactful. It's very difficult to watch. Okay. Well, I'm gonna say that of all of these movies that are the French extremists, and we there really is now a resurgence in this. It is the American attitude toward the movies that I think is the focus, right? Because when we see movies, we make suppositions. So let's talk about Bollywood real quick and see if we can come up with some interesting ideas about Bollywood. Tori, have you seen any Bollywood movies? And I bet
Yes,
I okay.
but
What have you seen?
Slumdog Millionaire, right? That was from Bollywood, right?
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, then that I think that's about it.
What about
I
you, Josh?
I want to say that I'm so culturally like sophisticated, and I'm not.
This is a tough one because we don't have a lot of access to Bollywood movies. We have uh, what we have is a lot of we have a lot of very interesting um, we have a lot of very interesting sideways
Mm.
um, access to Bollywood movies, but we don't. It's not like we're gonna go walk into a theater and all of a sudden see, the Bollywood version of Guys and Dolls hanging out in the theater because we're not. That's just not gonna happen. But um, Josh, have you seen any?
I have seen a lot of different people's takes on the Bollywood subject, but I have not actually seen anything from Bollywood.
What are your general and overall impressions of what a Bollywood movie is?
Well, my first impression is a question that I ask myself every time I see something. Yesterday, we were talking, I showed you a snippet of a video from an American TV show
Hmm.
that had a big Bollywood number.
Yes, yes.
And every time I see something like that, I'm like, why haven't I watched a ton of these? Because I love it. And like you said, I think it all comes down to access.
So okay, so give me. So what was the example that you showed yesterday? First of all,
Yesterday, I showed you a clip from The Neighbors. It was an
right.
American TV series about a group of aliens from outer space that land in like New Jersey or something. They buy every house in a gated community. One of the alien families leaves, leaving the house vacant, and a human family moves in. So it's the sitcom misadventures of humans living in an alien neighborhood. I'm sure there's metaphors to go all around. But in one particular episode, the leader of the aliens, uh, who does have a day job, gets invited to a traditional Indian wedding. And as he's learning about, traditions, and teaching the other aliens about what's going on, it all culminates into this huge Bollywood like dance number. Elephants dancing in the streets, and it's called Bali Bali. If you go on YouTube, check that out. It's very entertaining. And of course, the punchline, spoilers for a show that was canceled like 8 years ago. Um, the punchline was this large parade of a Bollywood dance sequence gets to the wedding, fully prepared to honor the bride and the groom. And when they get there, they see traditional Indian wedding means traditional Native American wedding. So the alien leader's like, wrong Indians, back it up. Definitely worth checking out.
So okay, okay. Well, Tori, tell me, what do you think makes a Bollywood film?
The festivities, the grandeur, like they're very over the top with their dancing and their colors and the nuance of it all. Like it's very intoxicating.
How much of that do you think is I- how much of that do you think is the real India, and how much of that do you think is just their cinema?
I think it's a lot to deal with real India. Because whenever I think of festivals and holidays over there, like it's very like, the colors and not National Geographic really like has covered this a lot. Like the colors, and you can almost smell the scenes through the paper, like it's the bazaars and all the Aladdin was the same way with Prince
Mm.
Ali, and like it's very like bigger than life kind of thing, and I think a lot of India has that bigger than life kind of attitude.
Yes, I completely agree that there is a larger than life attitude in in the storytelling. I don't know enough about India to be able to say if everyday life is like that, but I do know that the storytelling is very over the top. Giant metaphors in the best way, just awesome, awesome stuff. But to me, whenever somebody says Bollywood, I immediately think of a musical number.
Yeah.
That's what sets it off, right? Is you have a musical number, people are doing things together, or the choreography is usually exceptional, those kinds of things. um so so sometimes we inadvertently mock Bollywood, or sometimes even overtly, by attaching musical numbers that are over the top, just like Josh was pointing out, that are over the top and that sort of signify, hey, this is about Bollywood, right? Here's how you can tell there's an over the top musical number. Oh, yes, this is what it must be. What's interesting to me is that it's one of the few places on the planet where you can identify the cinema based on the style of, and and I guess the inclusion of musical numbers as, hey, here's how you know that it's Bollywood. Which I find interesting because I don't think there's anything that correlates to that in, at least in Western cinema. Can you think of? I'm struggling with that one. I don't know. Do you guys? Can you guys think of anything?
I mean, maybe Broadway.
Yeah, I guess show tuney maybe,
Yeah.
when something is kind of show tuney. Um, one of the I think personally one of the most interesting things about Bollywood in general is the sheer volume of movies that they are able to create. It's I forgot what the statistics are. I think I want to say that, I mean, this is pre-COVID. The I feel like it's an unbelievable number. We put out a few features every year, right? And I mean, it's we have very specific windows by which we put out our big content. Um, Bollywood produces about 1,000 films every year.
Wow.
I mean, it's billions of dollars. And I'm not saying that Hollywood is not also billions of dollars, because it absolutely is. But we do not produce 1,000 films in Hollywood a year. Even if we were to put in all of the movies that are done from independent production companies, and we don't come close. We just don't come close. It's just a totally different mechanism. So that's, I feel like that is very interesting. Just the sheer volume of movies that they're able to put out, and they can't all be awesome, but I feel like they do a better job of making fairly interesting ideas. Um, Whereas a lot of our straight to DVD content is just so poor. It's so awful. Um, and this is not to throw shade at any streaming content service, because I love you all. But if you cruise Hulu, you'll find some of the, great scrape the bottom of the barrel movies out there. And you can tell that they were really meant to be just sort of quick, down and dirty films to get content, there's not a whole lot there. There's not a whole lot of there. Um, so that also is, I think, kind of interesting. Just as a quick example, I just looked up how many Hollywood movies are made in a year, right? And it is about close to 400. Sometimes a bit less because it depends on, kind of what's happening. But that's that's half. That's half. So
Yeah.
that definitely is it's interesting. Okay. I want to, before we have to wrap up here, I want to talk real quick about um, Asian, specifically about Asian horror again. I know we touched on it, but I want to go back to this because I feel like this is like one of the places where we can really see some interesting ideas moving forward. Do either of you guys follow the film festivals at all?
Not too closely. There was one specifically. I didn't mention this on the air, did I?
I don't think so.
Well, there was a festival in Madrid, Spain. Maybe you've heard of it.
I have heard of Madrid.
Yes. And during that, the award for best uh, what best television episode slash web series went to a little something called Bad Agent.
Oh, hey. So what you're trying to say is you're famous.
No, I'm not famous. Brandon, the co-host of the Wadcast, which you can catch every Friday night from Wadco Media, is famous. Ryan, the star of Bad Agent, is famous. I am not famous.
Oh.
But just because you know those people, you are by proxy, you know, an
Yes.
influencer. You're
Hmm.
famous.
For those of you that might not be aware, Bad Agent is the series that Brandon and I are working on bringing to life. And if you want to catch the short film, which Brandon independently produced, it's on Amazon Prime. So check her out. It's also the
Wow.
thing that won the award.
Nice.
Okay. So obviously film festivals are a great place to discover content because there you go. This awesome content. Um Film festivals are also the place where most people will see an introduction to in fact, it's usually the place that movies that don't have distribution go to search for some distribution. A lot of independent movies do that. And a lot of movies, we hear a lot about cons. We hear quite a bit about Sundance. If you're in the Northeast, you know what Tribeca Film Festival is. Um, Toronto is another one, which is pretty famous. And probably everybody knows South by Southwest because that's, for other reasons, that's also really pretty big. A lot of times, foreign films will make it into one of these categories that the film festival is hosting, and you'll see things that you don't see normally. And I think that while, I like this idea because it gives us a peek into movies that we may not see normally. Um, I was trying to think myself, so I'm going to ask you guys: how do you think we can get more foreign films into our content altogether? Is it more content providers like, channels on Roku, or channels that are streaming that we can get that way, or is it something else? Do we need to be exposed to these movies inside of the theater to help make them more mainstream, or what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Tori?
I think that maybe introducing ones that are kind of similar to American cinema first, like opening up that door, kind of like a stepping stone into the world of European cinema and French shock stuff and Japanese horror. Like we need like a stepping stone into there because if we have like a little taste of it, but it's still some home, well, it's like it's like going to spend the night at your best friend's house for the first time, you know.
Do,
Does that make
do,
sense to you?
yes, it does. And do you think? I guess going back to my original sort of point on Asian horror, do you think that it is more appropriate for us to add more of that kind of stuff, which we know that people go to see, into actual movie releases, into theater releases, should say?
Yes.
Or yes, you think so?
Yeah, definitely. I think that if we got like a hybrid kind of movie that would touch both bases, that would warm us up to other concepts. I think that would be really good.
I sometimes think that that's true, and I wish for it pretty strongly. But I also feel like we have some kind of block against it too, where we just simply cannot seem to embrace enough of what is foreign. Like we can't seem to open up enough to say, okay, we can accept that this is different, therefore it can still be, or and therefore it can still be enjoyable. Um, when something is alien to us, sometimes I think that we put up barriers that then are very difficult to take down in order to get passive enjoyment out of something. Josh, what's your take? What do you think?
Well, it would be nice if there were more streaming services that would, I hate to use the term, but be brave enough to have a few more foreign films. Although Netflix, of all places, is really a treasure trove of foreign language stuff.
It is.
Unfortunately, they're also terrible at marketing it. They are the absolute worst. There's a certain French film from the last couple of years that comes to mind. Um, but if they had as much enthusiasm for promoting just a plethora of um, not only films from different countries but foreign language films,
Mm.
rather than, because we all know that no matter where you are in the world as a filmmaker, chances are you're going to try and I do mean try to direct an English language movie because that's the majority of the market, right?
Hmm.
So if we could have a few more American companies taking more chances with like really good, and I don't want to say it like that because that means there's somebody there curating what we get. But if somebody would just take more chances on more marketable um, foreign films, foreign language
Mhm.
films, I think slowly but surely it could become a bigger part of the American entertainment diet. There
Yeah,
are a few exceptions that have come across, like you said, Squid Games is a very good example of that. It became not only you know popular but a phenomenon. Yeah.
did you see that? Did you watch Squid Games?
Oh, of course. And I tried to watch the. Well, it's not that I tried. It was default on the dub version, and I was like, no, this is not great. So I switched it over to the subs because that's my preference. But I think because it might have been defaulted at dubbed, maybe some people were able to, people that wouldn't normally be into foreign language stuff were able to kind of clear that initial hurdle.
Right. Yes, I actually think that you're right. A couple of a couple years ago, I watched a movie called City of God. It is the original language is Portuguese. It's from Brazil. And I'm sorry, I know we're going over. I promise I will hop make this a little bit quick because I'm sure Tori needs to leave pretty soon.
I do. That's
um,
okay.
I want I kind of want to end with this as being I think one of the reasons that it is worth it to take a chance on foreign films. Um, City of God is not your average American style movie. It is. It's a movie about. At the heart of the movie, it is about a relationship, and the relationship is in a place where the violence of the neighborhood really dictates what they can and cannot do. Um, it was shot in Rio's poorest, and I mean really poverty stricken neighborhoods, and you really get a sense for how desperate the times are. Um, it is incredibly difficult to watch. The violence is absolutely over the top, but it tells a really strong both cautionary tale and a tale of deep sadness, but partly that deep sadness is the reason that people keep going and going and going and going. And I think it would almost be impossible to tell this magnitude of a story if it were to take place in the US or if it were to come from a US perspective, because we don't deal with that same kind of poverty. Our poverty looks very different than it does in other places around the planet. And again, this sort of embraces the idea that I was trying to get through before, which is foreign films represent foreign concepts, but they also bring to us, I think, a sense of humanity that if we look at it through their lens, we get a deeper, wider perspective of what humanity really is. And so I encourage everyone to please go out, find yourself a good foreign film. City of God is a great place to start. Be aware that it's pretty brutal. And really experience some of these things. Like Josh said, Netflix has a ton. Hulu has quite a few. Amazon Prime is filled with foreign titles. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Um, with that being said, although this is the movie potluck and usually we bring food, I am just going to say that everyone here is going to bring the ingredients for something that is international. We will cook them all together and we will make a giant dish of, I don't know, some amazing street food that we will throw into a wok and add some sesame oil and make absolutely delicious. Tori, how can we find you on social media?
You can find me every Friday night on my podcast called The Infectious Geek, and it's at 9 o'clock. And this week we are interviewing a producer, director, author named Joshua Brucker, and it should be great. I can't wait to see what he's up to nowadays, and his other stuff was pretty good. You can catch me also every Wednesday at 9 p.m. with you guys whenever we do the pilot season and when we review pilot episodes of different TV shows. And then you can also catch me every Thursday night here for the movie potluck. And you can get me on Facebook at Tori Rush, and you can catch me on Instagram at Rush Tori.
Yes, don't forget those things. Those are very important.
Yeah.
Josh, how can we find you on social media?
Well, as usual, Shazam. You can go
Hey,
to Twitter at SkidComic. You can go to wadcomedia.com for all of the links to social medias, or you can go to thewadcast.com to, look at what the Wadcast is up to, which is every Friday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. You can find those Facebook pages at your own leisure. the links are available at wadcomedia.com and thewadcast.com. So before I kick things back over to you, Jen, I'm going to throw out this little teaser for the future,
Mm.
and it's a bit of something Jen doesn't know I'm going to be throwing out there tonight. So,
Uh-oh.
but there is something coming down the line from the mind of Jen that you need to keep your senses opened up for, because it'll be here before you know it. So, something new coming your way.
So I think I may have a general idea of what you speak. So I will actually address that slightly.
Okay.
But before I do that, I will tell you that you can find me at moviesandmeals.com. And I will say that next week, first of all, I apologize for this week being so rambly. Foreign films are really difficult to pin down topic wise. There's just so much to talk about. Next week, I think, will be a little bit more organized because, of course, we are going to talk about disaster movies. And
Yay!
disaster movies are pretty fun, I have to say. Everybody's got their own favorite disaster movies, from volcanoes to Wreck It Ralph, destroying the internet, uh, tidal waves. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Anyway, we are going to talk about disaster movies next week. I hope everyone will join us for that. Uh, Josh was talking a little bit about our seed kernel of an idea of developing something like what we do here, a little bit more organized around TV shows.
Mm.
So instead of having our topics revolving around movies, we'll have some topics about TV shows and tropes and some deconstructions and, hey, what's on TV this week that you might not want to miss out on. So let's see what happens with that. I also just want to mention that this is the next to last episode of the movie podcast. Our very last episode is horror and spooky stuff, and that one I think is going to be really fun too. But before I forget to say this, I have really enjoyed this. This has been amazing. Thank you, everyone, so much for indulging me and my guests. I can't even speak highly enough of you. So I just wanted to get that out there before I forget. So we will see you next time on the movie podcast. Everyone, bring an awesome disaster movie and bring something disastrous to eat too, because that's always fun. Yes. So we'll see you next time.